Thanks for joining us here at GolfTech in Melbourne. And what we want to talk today about is the basic pitch shot. Now, I think this is an area that's of such interest to so many golfers because, you know, the basic pitch shot where you might have like 10 or 15 meters and you've got to go over heavy rough or over a bunker. The pins, you know, on the front of the green, haven't got a lot of green to work with. You've got to get the ball up in the air onto the green. Now, it's what I call one of golf's last chance shots. You know, there is no way to really avoid it and play the game successfully because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you have to pitch the ball in the air onto the green. You know, a couple of things. One is, you know, a lot of people think, you know, you can hook a shot over the trees on the other fairway off the tee, right? And then you can hit the next shot back over the trees onto the green, you can make a par or a birdie. You can get out of that situation, right? You can hit a ball into a bunker, it's a hazard or a water hazard, but if you can play a successful recovery shot, where you go into the trees, you can punch it out under a low tree branch, you're still able to shoot the score you ideally want to shoot. If you can't pitch the ball from 10 or 15 meters and you put it into the rough in front of you or into a bunker or you skinny it over the back, you're not going to be able to shoot the sort of scores that you should be able to shoot. And if you are good at this basic pitch shot, you can really elevate yourself beyond what you might have thought of as your total golfing capability. So, basic pitch shot. Now, I'm sort of an authority in a way on where this can go wrong because where I grew up in Perth in Western Australia, we had kikuyu fairways. Now, if anyone knows anything about kikuyu fairways, it's a very sort of tough, wiry grass. Tends to grow long in the summer. The ball would sit down in the grass. And my pitching method from when I was a kid was basically, you know, I would be hitting down on the ball would be back in my stance, weight forward, hands forward, a very abrupt wrist hinge, and then I would hit down into the grass. And that would sort of gouge the ball out of those kikuyu fairways. Big divots, you know, and if I hit, you know, a little bit behind it, it was a tough shot. I hit a lot of fat shots, but it wasn't a shot where you could sweep it off the turf at all, okay? So then I come to Melbourne, and suddenly I'm playing at, you know, Royal Melbourne and Victoria. I'm playing tournaments off of, you know, Cooch and Santerre and, you know, tight fairways with tight lines. And it's embarrassing. I'm hitting, you know, I've got the leading edge, this leading edge, which we're going to talk about the bounce lead. I've got it digging into the ground. I'm hitting an inch or so behind the ball at times, and I'm just hitting that little chili dip. The divot's going further than the ball. You know, it's just flopping over, and you know, people are laughing at me. I'm a supposedly good golfer, and I can't pitch the golf ball. And I kind of got the yips a bit. I was like, geez, you know, I was overshot, thinking, I don't know what's going to happen here, and I got nervous. And you know, there's still remnants of a little bit of a stutter sometimes at the start of my swing, which is, you know, what happens with the yips. Psychologically, you get scared to take the club away. So, you know, a lot of people think, oh, pros, you know, they've always been good at everything, right? Not the case. There's a lot of pros that have actually struggled with their putting, as we would know, but also short chip shots around the green. So how do you, you know, get this correct contact? If you get the right contact in pitching, have you ever noticed that when you get correct contact with short game shots, it goes about the right distance? It's only the ones where you skinny them that go way over or hit fat shots where they come up way short. Get the right contact, it goes the right distance. So what we're trying to do is this. You don't want to put the ball back in your stance. You don't want to lean the shaft a long way forward. That just negates the advantage that you have with the club, which is using the bounce. Now, if I bring this in close, Michael's filming on the camera there, and he can see from close up that the back end of the club is lower than the front end. That's the part you want to contact the ground with. That's the skimming, that's the brushing area of the club. That's the part that doesn't dig into the ground. That's the part that digs in. There's some shots where we want to use it in a divot and things like that, but not as a general rule. So I'm going to put the ball slightly forward of my quite narrow stance. I'm close to the green, it's a short shot. I'm not leaning the shaft a long way forward, folks. I've got it pretty much vertical, and the club face for a standard pitch shot's pretty square. I've got just a neutral grip, which is my hands just in that fashion on top of the club. Don't want to go really strong. They'll want to come back to that position. I've got a shut club face. I'm taking the loft off, and I've got that digging edge coming in. Don't want to go really weak. Club might come in open, then I'm feeling like I've got to flip it and do a whole bunch of stuff. So neutral grip. We're going to be doing more videos on grip just on its own. And narrow stance. I'm placing my weight a little bit left. I'm doing it by just standing a little bit more on my left leg. I'm not pushing my hips forward, which gets my weight feeling left, but leans my body to the right. And the bottom of my swing is where my sternum is. I've got the bottom of my swing behind the golf ball when I do that. So just standing left. Now, the technique of a pitch shot is so simple when you get it right, and it's so effective. What I want to do is establish my setup. That gives me really perfect contact in a sense. If I just come back to this position, I'm going to have pretty good contact. The swing is just swinging the club head away and letting my wrist load just a little bit to give me a little bit of energy in the swing. Then, most importantly, I have to release that angle. I have to let those wrists release back to that point. And as I do that, I just turn through slightly onto my front side. I'll get the club to the bottom of the ball, it'll brush along the turf, and I'll get good contact. Now, where does it go wrong for people? Well, it goes wrong because they think they've got to hit the ball and then the ground and take a divot to get solid contact. So what they do is, if they happen to get into a good setup, so many of them have the ball back and the weight forward, but if they happen to get into a good setup, they make a good backswing, a little bit of hinge, and then they think they've got to lead with the hands. So if they lead with the hands, the leading edge is coming in again, they've lost the bounce. As they lead with the hands too much, can you see that club head is not getting to the bottom of the arc, you see? My radius that started at this length, when I had reasonable posture and let my arms hang, now got shorter. So I'm going to blade shot. So I'm going to come in and hit the equator of the ball. That's where we then see people trying to get to the bottom of the ball by dropping with the knees or tilting the right shoulder back. So what I've got to do is feel like my setup's correct. I load with a little bit of hinge on the way back. I let it release as I turn through. Can you see I'm finishing actually quite tall? Now, the other aspect that goes along with this is my arms are still just upper arms attached to my torso. So I'm not really extending my arms out to the target. Once again, that destroys my correct arc and radius, and it puts the bottom of the swing in the wrong place. So every time I'm doing this, ball just forward to centre, weight slightly forward, little bit of hinge, and let it release every time. I'll get a pretty good shot. My grip's good, so the ball only went 40 centimetres to the right. That was an 18-metre carry. If I wanted to go further, I'll make a slightly longer backswing, slightly longer follow through, shorter backswing, shorter follow through. Those are the basics of pitching. That helps you with your basic pitch shot.